Hi, I'm Katrina Mikett. I'm the co-curator along with Celine Moe for the show up at Victory Moe Gallery in New York City right now called Armed Disposal. The show includes 8 different artists who all look at the issue of guns and gun violence within the United States. The show specifically is interested in looking at whether or not the consumerist aspect is achieving the original goals of the Second Amendment, which is to protect, because a violent means prevent violent ends. So I'm here today with one of the 8 artists, Margaret Roleke, and she has a beautiful rhizomatic sculpture made out of shotguns in the exhibit. She's here to talk to us a little bit more about it. So hi, Margaret.
Hi.
Hi, thanks for joining me.
Sure.
If you could give me a quick intro as to where you're located, what's your background in the arts, how did you get into this type of work, that'd be great.
Sure. I actually live in Easton, Connecticut, about an hour and 10 minutes from New York. I grew up in Long Island, went to college, studied art, went to grad school at Long Island University, kind of was a painter and a sculptor, but for the last 15, 20 years, I'd say I've become more of like a political activist artist. It just sort of occurred naturally. I'm a mother of 4 children, and at one point my art was more about my experience as a mom and motherhood. And then as they got older, it kind of shifted. And I've really been involved with gun violence and gun control a lot, very much so for the last 10 years. And I donate a portion of anything I sell to like different organizations that support gun control.
And what was the catalyst that sort of moved you into working on gun violence as an artist?
Really, I actually used to live fairly close to Sandy Hook, and when that horrible situation occurred, I actually knew one of the grandfathers of one of the kids who passed away, and I don't know, that really just upset me so much that I just felt like I had to bring it into my artwork more. So that was really a very sad thing, but I felt like in many ways I bring my art is more like pretty and doesn't really have that whole, it kind of gets people going because I use the actual shotgun shells, so it just causes you to have a discussion about it, which I think is what works well.
Yeah, I think what you're talking about really touches on the juxtaposition of your work, is that issue of beauty, but also the fact that it's made with such a sort of violent tool. And so could you tell us a little bit about what your material is and where you get it?
Sure. I use these spent shotgun shells. I actually have a few right here. They all have like the branding of the name of the company that makes them and the gauge. And also a piece behind me is made out of the spent shells. So these shells were all used, and at one point I did a piece that I brought to a shooting range in Danbury, Connecticut, and that piece is called Weapons of Mass Destruction, and I had a sign shot there. And when I was there, I was like, oh, look, there's these shotgun shells and this other stuff. And I just kind of collected some, and I wasn't sure what I was going to do with it. But then I started doing, I'm also a printmaker, and I started doing prints using the collages or the paper targets. And I go to antique gun shops and get these old paper targets and use them. And then I had the shotgun shells. So one day I just strung them together. I was having a show in Brooklyn at Odetta Gallery, and the curator came to my studio and said, oh, I love these other pieces, but this is great. This is like DNA. You have to do something with this. So I started doing a lot of pieces with the spent shells, and it ended up that an old neighbor of mine belongs to a shooting club, and he will just give me as many as I want, because the horrible part is that, you know, a lot of times they're just thrown out. And so they're this huge environmental waste, and a lot of them still have a little lead on them. But some people do refill them. So it's like the shot is inside the plastic shell, and that goes out into the environment. So anyway, George will give me as many as I want, so I just collect them, and it became sort of like my paint. I was just like, this is just something interesting, and I started wrapping them, doing all different things with them. But what I love is like what you said. I create something that kind of draws people in because I've done pieces outdoors also, and then they see what it's about, and it starts a conversation. And that's what I think you really need, is a conversation on gun control or guns. Or yes, I shoot, but I shoot in the country, and I don't know, it just kind of happened naturally how it all evolved. But I kind of love using them.
Yeah, as I've been putting this show together, as much as I have my personal beliefs, when I look at the more legislative side to it, the talking to people about it, the issue becomes really, really complicated. And so when you create these huge sculptures using these objects that have so much weighted meaning to them, I think it's a great metaphor for the issue of just how complicated it is and how conflicted a lot of people are. I was talking with a friend today whose spouse has a gun. He does hunting with it, and and she's like, well, he's a responsible gun owner, that sort of thing. He uses it for hunting, and I'm like, oh, but what if,
Right.
but what if, there's always that side to it. And so I don't know, I love that conversation that your pieces bring to it. I'd like to take a moment and try to share what your art looks like within the gallery, because it's really amazing. What you can see in the shared screen right now is Margaret's work installed within Victory Mo Gallery. Margaret, do you mind taking us through the process of installing it? And perhaps, could you guess how many shotgun shells are in it?
I'm not really even positive how many shells are in there. But I had like, I think about 10 huge trash bags, like full of them. But basically I string them together. In this case, I drill the hole for each one, and then strung them with different gauged wires. So some kind of have very thin wire, and they just kind of hang like, yeah, softly. And then there's a few have very, very thick wire, almost like a slinky.
Mm-hmm.
And I kind of love what that does. It kind of animates the whole thing. So basically, I was given this lovely space and had this corner, and I'm like, I wanted to do something that was, you come around the corner into that space of the gallery, and I kind of just wanted to activate the space in some manner. So I feel like I'm a very intuitive artist. So when I just got up there, and I took the biggest strands that I have that were pretty long, about, forget what the height of the gallery, I think is 10 feet, but these are like 16 or 17. So they kind of drape down, and they're thick and a little hard to work with, but I just screwed into the wall and then used zip ties to hold them onto the screw. So I started with some of the larger strands, and then sort of just played around putting them all together there.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. It's amazing how many different colors you're able to get out of it.
Yeah, it's a little weird, but like I think usually red and yellow are the most common colors, but then some companies make these other colors. But somebody did say like, oh, the pink, that was for breast cancer awareness. I was like, okay, that's weird.
Wow.
But no, they really are interesting. I just yesterday took down an outdoor piece that I had up for over a year, and nothing really faded, except some of the red ones turned into a bluer color. And I was like, whoa, that's a great color too.